In this video, we're going to be doing a custom 3-inch exhaust on my 1997 3rd gen Toyota 4Runner V6 model. Now the exhaust on the 4Runner is going to be a 3-inch exhaust. So we got a 3-inch single pipe, and you're probably already thinking, well, that's wrong. You're going to need more pipe than that. But we're going to be doing something different. So that's why we're using this single pipe. We obviously have our muffler, our tip. These are the hangers I'm gonna go with. They're clamp-on hangers, I guess you can call them. But just in case those don't work, we do have some weld-ons just in case. We are going V-band. We have a 3-inch to a 2 1/4 reducer. The reason we need this is because by the cat, well, the whole pipe on the car, stock pipe, is 2 1/4. So since we're going to 3-inch, before we get into that, 3-inch cat. So what we're going to do is where the Y pipe is that goes into the cat, we're going to expand it. So we're going to go from 2 1/4 to 3. And then we're going to have the V-band connects the cat. And then the cat goes into the main pipe. The main pipe goes into the muffler, and obviously, and then the tip. On the stock setup, the cat is actually welded into the main pipe, the main, I guess, mid to end pipe, and it's only bolted onto the front Y pipe. So we're going to make this a fully removable cat, so that way if it goes bad in the future for any reason, we can easily remove it and put a new one instead of worrying about cutting and welding. Now the main focus on this exhaust is going to be this muffler. This is from Flash Shark. They sent it to me and they said, hey, would you mind doing a video on this? And I said, yeah, but all my opinions and reviews on any product are 100% honest. I don't take any favoritism just because you send me the product. So if you're cool with that, we can do it. And they said, yeah. And that was fantastic. So they did send this out free of charge, but they didn't give me any money or anything like that. They just sent me this. And honestly, you know how you can hold something in your hands and you know either feels cheap or it doesn't? This feels like any muffler that I've held from any brand. Doesn't matter if it's Magnaflow, HKS, it doesn't matter. Any of those brands feels the same. Welds look good overall from what I can tell. I mean, obviously they're covered up. It comes from them painted. And these inlets and outlets, they are marked right away. As you can see, that one's an inlet. And then obviously that's going to be an out. So this is where the tip will go, and that's where the main pipe will go. These are expanded. So what that means is if you have a 3-inch pipe, because that is a 3-inch muffler, but because it's expanded, it will just slide in there, and then you can easily weld. The only problem with that is because this tip is also, as you can see, a little expanded. That's not going to work. So what we're going to do is we're just going to, right here where the expansion basically ends or starts, we're just going to cut that, and then we can fit it directly in there and we'll just weld it on instead of having it clamp on style like it's supposed to be, because this is already expanded. Now back on the muffler. I do love the fact that it's already coated. It's 409 stainless steel, which is good. Obviously, I prefer 304, but 409 is still good, especially when you have a coating on it. Looks good. Nothing, I mean, inside looks good. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but everything looks proper. The only thing I will say, obviously, I'm moving around. I did notice there's some creases, I guess. I don't know if that's from the paint or the metal itself. And I don't know if you saw, but right here, it did already have some paint chipped off of it. This could be just from it was actually packaged really good when I got it. I do want to say that, but I think whoever delivered it, they just kept dropping the package one too many times and it got to it. But I'm not too worried about it. I got some extra paint. I'll just paint that over so that way it prevents any kind of rusting. But otherwise, honestly, I am really impressed with the quality for what the price is. And they did give me a discount code. So if you guys are interested in picking up, they do actually have universal piping. They didn't have it at the time when they sent me the muffler, but they do have universal piping just like this, 304 stainless. They also have aluminized stainless, I believe. And obviously a few different style mufflers. This is the one that seemed to work the best for the 4Runner. But I am excited to hear what this is going to sound like, especially considering it's a 3-inch, obviously bigger diameter than stock, and it should have a little more, I guess, sound travel compared to stock. So it should sound good, but I don't think it's going to be too loud. Now, there are some people that know that I'm doing this, and they're like, man, you're putting a 3-inch on this thing. It's going to be loud. I don't think it's going to be that loud. But as I already mentioned, we're doing the tip right from the muffler. So that's why we're only using one pipe, because instead of going over the rear axle and extending that tip to go and exit behind the rear wheels, we're just going to actually have it dump right underneath that rear axle, right before that rear axle. So we don't have to run any more tubing. So we're just going to need that, and we'll be good. Now, as for doing the welding, I do have a welder. It's set up for MIG. I don't have TIG gas, and honestly, I don't have the money to try to mess around and TIG this myself. I do want to TIG since it is stainless, and I just don't have the money to accidentally screw up the V-bands, screw up the cat, because I'm still learning. So because of that, I am going to take it to a shop, and I've talked about the shop before, and that's
MXPI Tuning. Of course, I've talked about them all the time, and that's for good reason, because they're the ones that I trust. When I need work done that I can't do, I go to them. Now, yes, over time I have become very good friends with everybody there, but that doesn't change the fact that they are car people who love cars and want to try to do awesome builds. They have won multiple awards for car shows and events that they go to local. Along with that, they carry a bunch of parts, and they can order a bunch of parts if needed. They do everything from suspension work to engine swaps, and of course exhaust work, and I will always recommend them to anybody that might need some work. Now on to the exhaust work. Ronell, the main mechanic at MXPI, he starts out by doing V-bands on the actual reducer and also on the cat. And of course, it doesn't need to be said, he is a professional, so of course he made sure everything was clean before he started welding. But that should be expected and obvious for a shop. But I figured just to show it, just in case anybody was concerned. Once that welding was done, then he did start cutting the stock exhaust at right before the cat, right after the first O2 sensor, and then of course the rear tail pipe that goes from the muffler over the axle. This piping did take a little while to cut through since it was very thick. From the factory up here, looks like it was like a twin wall metal piping that just took a while to cut through, but eventually he did. Now I did try to help out with some manual labor by helping hold stuff up and just take stuff off. One, because we're friends, and two, because he's helping me out by getting this exhaust welded for me and properly fitted. Here's a quick look at the difference in sizing between the stock muffler and the aftermarket one. As you can see, the overall size is smaller, but obviously we're increasing the 3-inch diameter. And of course, here's the 3-inch aftermarket cat next to the stock cat. Again, overall size is smaller, but the diameter is bigger. Now I did mess up, and I didn't realize there was a second O2 sensor after the cat. Luckily, MXPI Tuning was able to source one out for me, and Ronell hooked it up by giving me an O2 bung that he had lying around. After cutting off the old exhaust, Ronell started welding the reducer to the front pipe / wide pipe. I told him this, if it was easier for him, he could MIG it since he's doing it on the car. and that's what he did. And honestly, I thought this was going to be the hardest part, but he knocked it out really fast and did a great job. After finishing welding the reducer to that front stock pipe, he of course focused on the main pipe that's going to have the muffler attached to it. He welded on the V-band and then mocked up the pipe to the car to see where the muffler was gonna fit, and also to see where that O2 bung that I missed was gonna have to be for the proper distance compared to how it was stock. And of course I was there trying to explain to him exactly what my vision was and how I saw this coming together. And of course with zero issues he was able to get that sorted and put together exactly how I envisioned it. Now before he decided to get the muffler attached to that pipe, he wanted to weld on that O2 bung onto the main pipe around the same place where the stock one was, so that way the distance was very much the same from the cat. Once that was done, he did cut that main pipe so that way he could mock up the muffler one more time to see how it was going to sit on the car. Then he removed the paint coating on both ends of the muffler openings so that way he could have zero issues with welding the muffler to the main pipe and of course to the tip. And of course he did clean everything up as good as he could to get everything to weld good. One final time he puts up the muffler to make sure everything is good and oriented properly, and then he starts welding it together to the main pipe. Once that was welded together, he of course put it back on the car so he could that way see if the hangers are going to work and also where the tip was gonna sit and how short he had to cut it. Luckily the hangers I got are gonna work, so we don't need to use the weld on, and the tip was cut to proper length to fit right before the axle in the muffler, and of course to remove that expansion that wasn't gonna work due to how this muffler was set up. Once that tip was cut, he of course test fitted it once more to make sure it'll fit good and not hit anything, and then after that was done he cleaned up the paint that he needed to remove to properly weld it. And then after all that, we did finally and officially put the new exhaust back together for the last time. Well, at least last time for now. And I did mention in the beginning that I was gonna paint the exhaust, and I did. I of course masked off the holes for each component, and then I scuffed it up with 220 sandpaper to make sure that the paint adheres to the metal as best as possible. And I kept doing this as much as I could until I thought I couldn't do anymore, and then once that was done, I of course cleaned up the metal with my favorite degreaser, and that's of course the Super Clean degreaser. They've been helping out the channel by providing me with their products, and I love them. I use them on everything. We've had a few giveaways with them, and hopefully we'll be able to do another one at some point soon. But I gotta give them a shout out because they've been supporters of this channel with their products for a while. And of course, wiped it down, let it dry, and then I started painting. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a professional at this, and honestly, I don't know what I'm doing, especially when it comes to paint. But I did what I understood what the basics were, which was making sure it was clean, scuffed up clean, and that's pretty much it. Now, I know I could have used primer before I used this paint on there, but at the same time, supposedly it's not necessary according to this paint, so we'll see how that turns out. If it ends up being bad or the paint starts peeling off or whatnot, then I'll just have to redo it, which I'm not really too worried about. All right, now before we hear the new exhaust, let's check out what the old one sounded out from the outside and in. as you can see, overall, very, very quiet exhaust. It's got a little bit of tone when you're listening to it on the outside, but overall, it's very quiet. On the inside of the car, all you actually hear is the induction noise from the intake that I installed previously. You don't actually hear any of the exhaust, which is something that I do like. I like being able to hear the exhaust within the cabin. Now, not obviously anything insane, but some of it. Now here's the 4Runner right after we got the exhaust on, put it down to the ground off the lift, and still in the shop. Now obviously the shop will echo the noise, but I will say this, the camera doesn't actually demonstrate how loud it is. It's very, very loud. Now my excitement there, if you can't hear if you're not using headphones, the car naturally has some pops and crackles from this exhaust setup. It's not obviously tuned for it or anything like that. It's just increasing that diameter, reducing the restrictions, creates that additional sound to the exhaust, which is nice. It's not over the top like a lot of other crackle and pop tunes that are out there. It's just a little bit, but I will say this, it is very loud, and in cabin it's even more loud, which is not something I really wanted. I did want in cabin noise, but not to this extent, but I was liking the crackles and pops. Now also the exhaust didn't have a lot of rasp, a lot of, I call it tinniness. Essentially it sounds like tin metal, like I can't explain it, but rasp is the best term, and I also wasn't happy with that. But this will happen with any exhaust that you do this, where you increase the diameter but you don't have any kind of resonator on. That rasp will be there on most, let me rephrase that, on most exhausts, especially exhausts for 6 cylinders and 4 cylinders. So to help the rasp and hopefully lower the sound a little bit, just because it's more than expected, I had Rennell install a resonator. Now I didn't get that on camera, but just like everything else, he cut, he welded, he cleaned. And this was a used resonator that MXPI Tuning hooked me up with. They had it laying around. They said, hey, we can help lower that rasp, and hopefully the sound will hook you up with this resonator. And this is why having a shop like MXPI Tuning available to you is extremely, extremely important, because they can always be there in a pinch when you need them. And here's what it sounds like with the resonator. Overall, the Resonator definitely reduced the rasp and that high-pitched tinniness that I was talking about. It's still a little bit there for the rasp part, but nowhere near as much. Still very much loud in cabin, but I think that has to do with because I'm dumping the exhaust directly under the cab, and the sounds are essentially bouncing back to the cabin off the street, and which is increasing that interior sound, which I will figure out at a later point. But overall, I'm very happy with him. The actual muffler itself is fantastic. I do want to say thank you to FlashArc for sending me this, and honestly, very good quality muffler. Ronell was very much surprised on how all the components that I brought him were welding. They were welding really good, and that's including the muffler itself. He had zero issues with getting anything welded together. Definitely check them out if you're interested. For the money, the muffler is definitely worth it, especially considering how expensive they can get through other companies that provide pretty much the same quality. And I do want to thank MXPI Tuning, my buddies over there, for dealing with me, dealing with my nonsense, and helping me get this exhaust put together. I truly appreciate it. Couldn't have done it without. And that's it for this video. Stay tuned in the channel because we got plenty more to come for the 9th Gen Accord and other projects.